All right, now joining us for reaction on the adoption of the budget is political analyst Professor Andre Duvenage. Good evening, Professor. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. So the fiscal framework as well as the report has been adopted. Some would say by a narrow margin, 194 in favor, of course, and 182 against. Firstly, your reaction to this?
Good evening, Mufundu. I think this is a very decisive moment for the government of national unity. I think it is unfortunate that it went to a vote, and we have seen the result. It's a very close margin, and it's clearly indicating to us that there are deep divisions within the context of the government of national unity. And most probably, we have seen the end of the government of national unity in its current form. And looking at the current state of affairs, looking back at the basics, we need to ask the question, is this budget going to contribute to the main objectives, things like economic growth, job creation, and so on? And unfortunately, it is not the case. My take on it is that we have a very small tax base, a completely overloaded tax base, and this tax base find it difficult more and more to invest into the economy. And then on the other side, we have a very ineffective government and system that is seeing more and more debt. And if I can just reflect on the debt situation, in 2009, the debt was something like 24% of the gross domestic product. Currently, it is something like 76%. So this is a very unfortunate scenario.
Most certainly, and that's why we had the Minister of Finance indicating that it would be an untenable situation to continue to borrow. But I want to take you just a few steps back, firstly, to the party that enabled the passing of this fiscal framework, ActionSA. They maintain that they're opposed to the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase, and in 30 days, Treasury will have to present an alternative revenue collection proposal. But other political parties have challenged them. We heard today to indicate where in the Money Bills Act such recommendations are provided for, because they've stressed today that it provides for two alternatives. Either you accept the report or amend it. There can be no insertion of recommendations. What did you make just on that back and forth?
Well, I think the recommendations in this way is clear. You must either accept it or you need to vote against it. And there is no way in between. So in that sense, it is not possible to accommodate the viewpoints of Action South Africa. In that sense, it will be interesting to see precisely where they have voted and also what the 24 people who was absent, from which parties were they, and what was their motivation in this regard. But when listening to some of the parliamentarians today, at least those that voted, the African National Congress to a certain extent, including the finance minister, still are of the view that the 0.5 VAT percentage hike was actually necessary. So if you have a party like ActionSA saying, we're giving you 30 days to come up with an alternative on how you're going to make up this shortfall of 28 billion that you now would not be able to receive because we are not accepting a 0.5 percentage VAT hike. In the 30 days, Treasury has spent more than 30 days attempting to find or to deal with the tough trade-offs. In the next 30 days, would they be able to come up with an alternative? Well, my understanding was that the income tax was already about 8 billion rand more than was expected. So the government had more money than they generally expected. So they had some leeway to accommodate their financial situation. But generally speaking, there are a lot of room to make money or to work on the budget in order to get it within the margins. I believe that the government in many ways are overspending and they need to relook their strategic priorities. As I mentioned earlier, the big problem is overspending on a very, very small tax base. And at the moment, South Africa are one of the countries that are exporting taxpayers, especially in the higher echelons. At the moment, something like 1.6 million individual taxpayers are paying for more than 70% of the private taxes in South Africa, and we cannot continue on that line. And I believe, Professor, that the majority are overtaxed.
Pardon me for interjecting there, just in the interest of time. So if I'm getting you correctly, you're of the view that the announcement by the SARS commissioner yesterday was quite timely when they announced that they'd collected far more than what they expected, 8.8 billion to be precise. You're saying that could, to a certain extent, assist the African National Congress to make good on their promise that come the 30 days, they probably could use that 8.8, and beyond this, then what happens with the bracket creep? Because among the issues or recommendations from ActionSA was the 0.5 VAT increase, but also they took issue to the decision not to adjust the personal income tax, that they didn't want the bracket creep to affect most citizens.
Well, at the moment, the bracket creep is affecting most citizens, and I believe that the 8.8 million are definitely working in the favor of the ANC, but it's also working against the principle of lifting the VAT level with 0.5%. I believe there were room within the general budget to accommodate that without higher tax rates as is presented in the current state of affairs.
And then just in closing, the political implications of all of this that unfolded in the past 24 hours, from ActionSA deciding to partner with the African National Congress to them passing this fiscal framework. You say that possibly we're going to see some sort of a new version of the government of national unity here, possibly what many have said is a reshuffle any moment now. You think that this is possible? We wouldn't see a situation where the president actually says, no, I don't want it to be perceived as me muzzling or somehow suppressing dissenting voices within this co-governing structure, so I will not reshuffle. You think the president would opt to reshuffle?
That is dependent on what the Democratic Alliance decided on the way forward. And I think there are two big scenarios playing itself out. On the one line, the DA can decide it to be still part of the government of national unity, accept the budget outcome and continue on the current line. But there's also the possibility that they may leave the government of national unity and that we may see a new reconfiguration of political factors. The question will be, how are the ANC going to accommodate newly parties like Action South Africa and their support for the ANC? In that sense, we may possibly see a realignment of groupings and a new formation of coalitions in terms of the National Assembly. But my general assessment is it's going to put more and more pressure on the ANC and on their support base.
Well, certainly interesting political developments ahead, because for the longest time, ActionSA has said that for them, they want to remain that constructive opposition because they felt who would then be watching the watchmen. So it would be interesting to see if they would accept, if the offer was on the table, to say, join the government of national unity. But thank you very much for your insights as always this evening. That's political analyst Professor Andre Duvenage giving us his take on today's parliamentary outcomes of most parties there deciding to vote in favor of the fiscal framework as well as the report.